So welcome to the Enterprise-Wide Employee Wellbeing webinar. We are so glad that you could join us today. And the vision of the Employee Wellbeing team is to create the culture and environment where employees feel supported in all aspects of their work and life, allowing our people to do their best work. And in order to support you, it's very important for us to best understand what you need through a listening strategy. And so you will receive a brief survey to get your feedback on today's webinar, along with any other suggestions you have on resources you would like to see to support employee well-being here at Mayo Clinic. In addition, as we create and launch new resources and initiatives, it's important to us to integrate our Mayo Clinic values, especially the values of bringing compassion and healing to our own employees as we navigate through this difficult time. And so one of the newer resources that we've launched is this monthly wellbeing webinar on a variety of different topics. So today is Pandemic Perseverance with Jody Nation. On November 19th is Racism and its Impact on Wellbeing, presented by the Kern Inclusion and Diversity team. And on December 10th is Employee Wellbeing at Mayo Clinic during and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic by Dr. West and Dr. Derby. And so after today's webinar, I'll send you more information on how to register for the upcoming webinars, along with links to the recorded webinars to give you an opportunity to watch and discuss the content with colleagues, or even bring the webinar to a work unit meeting. I'll also highlight a variety of other upcoming resources that we have available for you. And before we get started, I am going to launch a little poll just to see where everyone is from today. So in a moment, you should see on your screen a poll that says, what is the Mayo Clinic site or region that I'm affiliated with? So if you would just select what is the site or region that you're closest to. I realize that we are in a work from anywhere environment. Give you a few more seconds. Thank you all for joining today. This is lovely. Okay, I am going to close the poll here in a moment, just a few other people. And here we go, end of poll right here. Okay, so as you can see, we have about 175 employees here today and representation from every site. So thank you for being here today. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Jody Nation is going to be speaking on pandemic perseverance. And Jody Nation is a licensed professional clinical counselor and works in the Mayo Clinic Rochester Employee Assistance Program. Jody assists employees with a large variety of concerns that impact well-being, including mental health, relationships, and work issues. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button. And with that being said, welcome, Jody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Bridget, for all of your help in getting this set up. We're going to be using some polls and chat features, and Bridget's going to help with that throughout the presentation. So hopefully we can make this a little bit more interactive. And I thank you for all commenting already in the chat box. And I saw someone mentioned to make sure that you set it so that all attendees can see and not just the panelists, so that way we can have some interaction throughout as well. So I thought this was a fitting picture for those of us living in the Midwest. We got hit with snow a little bit early this year, and I don't think of much better analogy for perseverance than getting through a good Minnesota winter. So we'll talk about how to do pandemic perseverance today. And really starting out with a quick definition, and for those of you who maybe know me know that I'm a horse lover, so this image stuck out to me. But perseverance is that steady, persistent in course of action, a purpose, a state, despite any obstacle or difficulties or discouragement that comes our way, which we've had our fair share of lately, for sure. So if I do my job well today, these are going to be the objectives that we're going to cover, the multitude of factors that impact our well-being during this time, learning some new connection strategies, or maybe just being reminded of some that you haven't thought of for a while. Also understanding how flexibility can help set realistic goals for our current times, and then develop skills to embrace a growth mindset. So I hope that we'll address all of those during our time together this afternoon. So really one of the things I want to emphasize throughout this talk is to pace yourself, right? None of these things are expected to be an all-encompassing to-do list. Perseverance is not a long race. It's many short races, one after the other. And I think there isn't a much better analogy for what we're going through right now than that. Just being that there are so many curveballs thrown our way on a regular basis, and learning how to adapt and handle them is really kind of key. And hopefully I'm going to leave you all with some good strategies about how to do that by the time we part ways. So I'm going to ask Bridget to put up our first poll, and for you to share areas that you've been impacted. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these, but routine was probably one of the biggest that hit us right off the bat. Just being completely disrupted in terms of how we do our everyday thing. And for those of us who, went home to work rather quickly, trying to find a home routine that works for us, and trying to adapt that with the needs of our family as well. Work, obviously going remote or really working in a different type of way than what we have before. Recreation, I think many of us saw, our gyms close, or groups that we're a part of, other sports activities and stuff not looking the same. I know for some area, high school sports even look quite different now. So my niece is a volleyball player, and watching her play in a mask or only being allowed one person per player. Again, just lots of different disruptions in that way. For the faith community, thinking about not always being able to be together. I know many churches went outside for part of the summer, but that's going to be different going forward. Watching things online or via Zoom. Again, they're all great strategies that we have, but they're different than what we're used to. And for a lot of people, they feel that they don't get that same kind of feeling, that uplifting feeling that they get from being in person and around a lot of people. And I'm looking at the poll as it's up, and again, it looks like all of these areas were impacted in some way, with routine and work being the biggest, recreation coming in there in third. So again, though, every area looks like it's been impacted in some way. The school community, I heard recently that some schools are going to distance learning beginning Monday. I know in my son's school, we already had that for a short 2-week break, and then we're able to go back in person. But having to be very fluid and not knowing what's happening one day to the next, I think that's difficult for a lot of us, because we're used to really being able to plan out things and know, okay, this is what my week looks like. But realistically, we know with COVID that could change at any time. And just the different way that our kids interact in school or even on the bus, lots of changes there. Celebrations, of course, maybe we're used to having, large birthday parties, or I think about Thanksgiving coming up and maybe the way we would normally gather. Again, going to be very different looking for a lot of people. Halloween, another area that's looking different for a lot of areas. Also thinking about the ability to grieve for those of us who may have experienced a loved one dying during this time. Funerals, wakes are not done in the way that we're traditionally used to them happening. And then also something I've heard from a lot of my clients that I work with is normally they have the opportunity to volunteer or give back. And that's not so much the case right now because of different restrictions. So we're going to go ahead and end that polling. And I see somebody raise their hand, so I'm going to let Bridget maybe address that quickly for me. But you can see, again, all of these areas have been impacted. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing those results. Excuse me, that's so embarrassing with having the cough and being at home right now. So we're going to, Bridget, was there anything from that raising hand that we needed to address?
I will put it in the chat. You can continue going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the difference between resilience and perseverance. Resilience is really our ability to recover quickly, adjust easily, where perseverance is about being able to continue on and do something or achieve things despite having lots of kind of roadblocks or obstacles in our way. And both are really important right now because we're being hit both ways. But with resilience, it's that ability to adapt to the change, and perseverance helps us with that courage to try new things and continue on even when it's really difficult. So I'm going to ask Bridget to put up my next poll about feeling overwhelmed and how often that's happening. And I like this little dinosaur graphic in thinking about kind of how many different struggles we deal with daily and how things that maybe didn't used to seem like a big deal to us maybe now do. So it looks like the vast majority of people who are on the talk are feeling either sometimes or often overwhelmed. And so hopefully we're going to, again, learn some strategies about how to cope with that feeling of being overwhelmed and what we can do to really address that. And the idea with the daily things being overwhelming is it can take so much more planning. You know, even running into the grocery store now is something that we maybe have to plan for, and we try to limit how many of our family members are with us. That can be an example of something, or trying to connect with a coworker when maybe you don't know their schedule, you know, if they're available, and trying to find that time where maybe normally you just walk down the hall and ask them a question. Again, all of these daily things that used to maybe not feel like they were so much work can feel really cumbersome right now. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the results. And again, sometimes or often kind of are our two leading ones. So we'll keep that in mind as we go forward with the presentation today. So factors that aid in perseverance. The first is really not focusing on the outcome. And I know that sounds strange, but a lot of times if we get too fixated on what we want to happen, it can be really detrimental to us in terms of when roadblocks get thrown in our way. Instead, perseverance is about doing our best to go forward and doing something that I'm not very good at, which is being patient. And a lot of us can maybe use some help in that area. The idea of having the ability to be non-reactive, again, something that we feel maybe is tested. Maybe before you felt like you really were patient or you could respond in a really calm manner. But with all the stress you're feeling and lack of outlets, maybe you feel like that's not so much the case right now. So really working to get back to that place, or if you weren't there before, learning how to build that skill. Being purpose-filled, a lot of times when we feel like we have a very clear purpose and we can connect that to what we're doing, it helps us to feel more focused and balanced. So sometimes what I mean by that, like let's say your purpose in life is to be kind, and maybe you feel like you had a really bad day. Thinking about how was I able to be kind to someone today can really change the way we view our day. Or if your view is like maybe feeling like you didn't get a lot done at work, but your purpose is to help others, really zeroing in and thinking about, well, how did I help or support someone today? That can definitely help. Our faith can be an important component to this, thinking about how that plays into your personal life. Also, positive self-talk. And positive self-talk is really about the messages you send yourself. You know, what types of things do you say, kind of that little inner voice? And do you say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to anyone else? And I know that sounds maybe a little bit backwards from what we're used to hearing, but we tend to be much harder on ourselves and to be our own worst critics. So thinking about when something doesn't go right, do you say things to yourself like, oh, you're so stupid, you're not going to figure that out? Or do you say things that you would maybe say to a coworker, wow, I'm so impressed you even knew to ask that question, or you caught that issue and now we can figure it out. So again, really monitoring that can help us figure out can help us really influence our mood. Also working to foster connection and not being afraid to ask for help when needed, and help in a multitude of areas, right? And, you know, it might be help at home, it might be help at work, it might be help in getting more support for ourselves emotionally. So a lot of different areas that can impact. So throughout all of this, connection is key. And many people feel like they're kind of holding on by a thread, right? Feeling really fragmented and not connected in the way they usually would, or in the way that they would want to. And I think what's different about now compared to, 9 months ago is thinking about, if you think of the visual of someone juggling, like many of us were juggling many, many different things before the pandemic hit, and we were doing okay. No, maybe not the best, but we were juggling it all. But then you add in all of the added stressors and it just becomes too much. And we start to feel like things are falling or that they're out of control. And that's one way that I think about connection in terms of really helping us kind of keep all of those things up in the air and keep things going in a way that doesn't feel so chaotic for us. So I want to share some ideas for connection. And these are more kind of like personal relationships outside of work. And I'm going to talk about work in just a moment. And I'd like to invite everyone in the chat to share other ideas for connection that you have, or if there's one that's worked really well for you, to share that. And Bridget will share those with us in a moment.
Yes, and please select all panelists and all attendees as you're sharing so everyone can see your comments. Thank you.
Great, and Bridget will share with a larger group and with me in a moment. But joining online communities, you know, so thinking about causes or hobbies, interests that you have, and really taking the time to participate in some like online chat groups or forums, sharing your knowledge with others. Like I see like a lot of like do-it-yourself kind of boards where people share share tips and strategies of how to best complete those projects, so you can really connect with people who share similar interests or have similar passions through online communities. Practice kindness, especially I think random acts of kindness can help you as well as the recipient, you know, really spreading that joy, feeling connected, feeling like a part of your community, that you're making a difference. Taking the time to video chat, because seeing someone's face really does matter. Also finding your creativity, you know, and I think this has so many applications. It could be being creative, you know, in the kitchen. It could be, you know, redecorating your space. It could be taking up a new hobby or connecting with art in a way maybe you haven't before. But again, finding something that sparks that creative piece of you. Participating in virtual events, like many of you are doing today. But I have a lot of people who play different games online together. There's been a lot of concerts lately that are broadcast online. Participating in some type of class, again, of an area of interest that you want to learn more about. I also think starting daily challenges with others can be a fun way to connect. Maybe some of you have seen this, but I've seen the push-up challenge going around Facebook quite a bit, you know, in terms of videoing yourself, doing whatever challenge it is and challenging others to enjoy you. You know, even thinking about sharing a daily joke or an inspirational quote to picture can be another way to connect. Create opportunities to learn more about others. You know, one idea that I've had some people do is to create a space for adult show and tell, or I've had people plan theme nights in terms of get-togethers. Like they'll have a vacation theme night and people share vacation pictures from their favorite spots they've been, or they'll have a theme night in terms of food or recipes, or even the way they dress. Can be all different ways to connect in new ways. Also taking advantage of technology, exploring apps that encourage connection. And I know a lot of these were created with the intent of fostering long distance relationships, but I think they can be helpful even in, you know, platonic or other relationships. There's lamps that you can buy that turn on, you know, it'll turn on in my house when I touch it, and also turn on at my grandmother's house when she touches it, or excuse me, when I touch it, it turns on at her house and vice versa. So you know that the other person's thinking of you. So there's all kinds of cool ways that technology can help. And Bridget, I'd invite you just to jump on for a moment and share any that you'd like to from the chat.
Yes, thank you, colleagues, for your wonderful ideas. So a few I'll just highlight, but there's a lot of excellent ones here. So Work Team has a Skype group chat, and we stay connected daily, both about work and life topics. Setting up one-on-one meetings with colleagues I don't see anymore to catch up in person, Cooking dinner or a fun activity with family using Zoom. I did an online funding for a friend with cancer. Other additional virtual happy hours and game nights with family and friends. And outdoor activities, enjoying hiking and biking, virtual coffee chat with coworkers occasionally. And I'll give you one other one, pick up the phone and call folks instead of the text routine. So thank you so much for sharing, excellent.
Yes, thank you all for taking the time to share those and adding to our list of ideas for everyone that's on the webinar today. These are some ideas for connection at work. And it sounds like we hit on some of those that you're doing, so that's great. But taking the time to schedule virtual lunches or coffee breaks. So even though we can't be in person with each other, to take that time and to have it be more of a relaxed interaction. Starting a question of the week, and this can be about any type of topic, but helping to kind of foster that communication and that connection. Taking the time to establish some mentoring relationships. Also, sharing some type of daily message, whether again it be a joke, a quote, an image, any of those things, but circulating and getting some insight into the person who's sharing that, and having some daily camaraderie can be really nice. Making time to get to know each other, sharing about pets, hobbies, family. I've had some groups tell me that during kind of their virtual weekly check-ins, everyone gets a turn and they put the camera on one of the pets that are in the coworkers' homes so they get to know about them. And I've had some people say, well, I don't have a pet, so I shared a plant. Again, just fun ways to connect. But don't forget to check on each other, especially if maybe you have a job that can be done more kind of in seclusion, and maybe you used to kind of have that casual conversation in the office, but being remote, you're not having it. Just taking the time to pick up the phone and call, or subject line of an email, or a quick Skype message. How are you doing? Is everything going okay at home? Haven't heard from you for a while. Just wanted to check in, to say hi. I miss our conversations. All of those things can be kind of a meaningful way to open things up for connection. So I'm going to let Bridget jump back on real quick in case there's any others that were shared ideas for connection at work. And I know she already shared some, so if there isn't any more, that's fine. But I appreciate all of you taking the time to participate.
There's wonderful ideas. Just so with Halloween, one group actually dressed up for their Zoom meeting, and then others are preparing for the long winter. So coming up with indoor hobbies to enjoy here in Minnesota, along with work groups, Glow, and Wellbeing Champions. So thank you for all of those wonderful ideas.
Yeah, those are fun ideas and great memories that you create as a work unit then too. I love that Halloween idea. Thanks for whoever shared that. So I want to talk about flexibility a little bit and why it matters. I think we get that term thrown out a lot in terms of flexible hours or flexible schedule or flexible in adjusting to tasks. And sometimes I feel like that is meant as a catch-all that you should just jump and do whatever is necessary. And I think flexibility, when I'm talking about it, it's really relates closely to perseverance and how we're able to adapt and respond to challenges that may arise. And I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek when I use it as my first bullet point on the benefits of flexibility when I say fewer injuries. For those of you who are athletes out there and you're thinking about your flexibility and your strength and how important that is. When I say fewer injuries, I'm not talking about the physical aspect, but I'm talking about the emotional aspect. When we're flexible, we have less emotional injury, meaning when I have the ability to adapt and to change and to be flexible in response to something that maybe didn't go quite the way I want it to, it helps it to have less of a negative emotional impact on me. So I'm going to kind of stick with our Halloween theme just a little bit, but I know I've had a lot of parents saying, I feel bad for what my kids, are potentially missing out on, or they've lost a lot already. And there's truth to that, right? And we need to acknowledge those feelings and that grief. But when being flexible, if we're saying, oh, the party I normally go to isn't going to happen, being flexible might be saying, oh, this could be a really great family night where we're going to have a themed meal, and then we're going to watch one of our favorite Halloween movies together, or we're going to door drop some treats for others that make us feel good and spread some joy. Again, having that flexibility helps it be less of an injury about what was lost, because we're able to say, what opportunity do I have here? And kind of, I know I say that in a couple of these other bullying points, but amazing things happen when we are open to them. We can have all kinds of really unique and fun opportunities, experiences when we allow that flexibility to kind of take over and problem solving. And this shift to thinking why something won't work to how could it work? So how could I make this a really special night? I can't do things exactly the way I want it to, but I could still make it special in a different way. And by being flexible, it really allows us to live in the moment and to experience kind of the good that is around us versus looking at, again, what didn't happen or what didn't go quite right or the way we had planned. And being flexible opens that door to opportunity. It allows us to see possibilities where maybe we never would have thought of them before. And so it can be a really exciting and good thing, even though it may start out feeling not so great. So again, I say acknowledging the feeling is important. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't have any of that grief or feel any of that loss. That's very real. But by acknowledging it and then saying, okay, so what am I going to do about that? What part of this is in my control? What new or exciting ways might I be able to adapt, can really open our minds and open our hearts to new and good experiences. We really want to set realistic expectations right now. So we want to look at life as it is now, not pre-pandemic or how we'd like it to be, and examine kind of what makes sense. So meaning if you know that you used to, exercise at the Dalk, I've heard that a lot. People are missing having the Dalk open. We know that that's not realistic to go to that right now, but what might we be able to say? Well, maybe some of your favorite instructors are ones that are posting some of the online content. And so you set the expectation of, oh, I'm going to work out with whoever my favorite person is each week by making sure I follow their postings, or I'm going to do this other interesting kind of exercise to me that maybe I wouldn't have tried before because I was kind of in my routine that I did. And so looking at life as it is now and what fits. I think it's also really important to be creative about how you fit things in. I've had people, especially as they transition to parenthood, talk about, well, I used to, play guitar for an hour each day or a few times a week, and that was really my outlet. But now with kids, I don't get that time. So it's like, okay, can we take out some pots and pans and let them bang along? And yeah, I get that it might not be the same impact as it was before, but you might find that it become a really unique and fun family experience. And maybe, work scheduling or scheduling with your kids and what you're trying to balance has changed. Instead of doing things in 30-minute blocks, maybe you have 3 10-minute blocks. Again, being creative about what makes sense for you right now and thinking about what you could try. And that's kind of a nice transition into this idea of not being afraid to try experiments. So meaning, don't worry about if it doesn't work exactly. If you say, like, I really want to bring reading back into my life, I enjoyed that downtime, that quiet time, that time for reflection, and you say, okay, I'm going to do it from this time to this time each night, and it doesn't work at first, that's okay. Don't be afraid to say, okay, what didn't work well about that? I'm going to try something different. Or maybe you're trying a new hobby or a new skill for the first time, and you know what, you decide that's not really for me. That's okay, you can then move on to the next, but not being afraid to try experiments or to have the expectation that something is going to work perfectly the first time or be the exact right fit. Also, focusing on what's not canceled can be helpful. Again, it's easy to look at all of the things we've lost, but sometimes taking a moment to think about things we've gained in terms of, time with our family, closeness, opportunities to be creative and problem solve and connect in new ways. Taking the time to really look at those things versus what's lost can be helpful. I do like to remind people, and I know one of the things I'm talking about today is trying new things and such, but I don't want people to leave feeling like there's any pressure. You don't have to come out of the pandemic with a new skill. You don't have to come out of the pandemic with a perfectly organized home. The idea is to focus on what makes you feel balanced and put the effort there. Sometimes I talk about the concept of digging where the ground is soft. And what I mean by that is start where you see change being the easiest and build from there. So if you have things that you're feeling like aren't really contributing to your sense of balance or your sense of peace, looking at what could I do just a little bit differently, but knowing that it isn't pressure or it's not a competition of how someone else is handling their pandemic experience compared to yours. So I want to share this kind of quote or concept. I have options, even if I don't know what they are right now. And this actually came out of some work that I was doing with an individual. And we had been talking about a situation that this person was going through. And I had said, oh, well, you still have lots of options left. There are all of these things. And the person left feeling like, whoa, I hadn't even thought about that. And the person was able to then apply that concept to many other things that were happening in life and have it kind of be a mindset, a fallback, so that when things felt overwhelming or things didn't feel well, to take a step back, to take a deep breath and remind yourself that I have options. I might not know what they are right now. I might need to talk to someone to help me figure them out, but I do have options. And that was really an empowering thing for this person, and something that I'm hoping will resonate with many of you on the webinar today. Just reminding yourself that there are lots of options out there. Sometimes we might not know what they are, but that's one of the reasons we're here in EAP sometimes, is to help people figure that out, or it's a good reason to reach out to supportive friends or family that can help. So keep that kind of concept in mind. So I want to talk about this idea of fixed mindset versus growth mindset and what that means. And after I talk about this for just a little bit, I'm going to put up a poll and ask which one you identify with most. But with a fixed mindset, it really assumes that attributes such as intelligence and creativity are static, meaning you have what you have, and that's where they are. There's no up, there's no down, it's just that's how much you have of it. Where a growth mindset really looks to stretch those abilities and create new. With a fixed mindset, there's this fear that failure somehow demonstrates that we're unintelligent, or it speaks to our character in some way. Where with a growth mindset, it's really about that failure aids in our ability to learn and to master new things, and it can be a learning experience. Often with a fixed mindset, people will feel threatened by others' success. Again, that comparison thing, feeling like there's maybe not enough to go around, where a growth mindset are inspired by others' success. With a fixed mindset, people often feel shut down by criticism, take it very personally, often ignore it. Where a growth mindset, you strive to learn from that. A lot of times I talk about the idea of a kernel of truth, meaning are you looking for just what part of that might be true, or what can I do with that information? With a fixed mindset, it's often easy to give up or avoid doing new things altogether because you don't want to fail or look stupid and avoid challenging things. Where with a growth mindset, you're really persisting in the face of obstacles. And so there's not a right way or a wrong way to be today, but I'm just curious if you'd fill up this poll and kind of give Bridget and I a snapshot of maybe where you feel you are today. I love how fast these come in. This is fun watching these numbers go up on the screen. So it looks like majority of people have put something in there, and it looks like kind of somewhere in between is about where the majority of our group falls. 34% say growth, 6% say fixed. And again, this is just a way to kind of help us think about where we're at, and hopefully a quick moment of self-reflection for you to think about where am I at, and maybe where do I want to be at, or which of those areas do I feel that I could stretch more. So thanks for taking the time to fill that out. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about growth mindset. The idea for the growth piece is to be free and have that freedom instead of being limited, and really to know that effort is acquired to build new skills, and finding that inspiration in other success. And again, having that real desire to learn, to approach things from I may not know the answers and that's okay. Or even, and I know this is really uncomfortable, and I'm not going to lie and say that I like that feeling either, but to feel vulnerable and maybe to feel stupid at times, but really to say, no, this is me in learning mode, and it's okay. And I'm excited to expand my abilities, instead of with a fixed mindset, letting that fear of failure or that fear of not looking like as competent as we'd like to be kind of really shut us down and stunt our growth, not allowing us to take the time to really step outside of our comfort zone and try new things. So I hope you'll kind of keep that in perspective when you're thinking about where you're at. I think it's important to remember that these things don't happen overnight. So I wanted to share this graphic of an acorn and an oak. When you think about the amount of time it takes to transform into something like that. And also, it's not a completely linear process, right? Sometimes we might be really great in one area and make a lot of forward progress, In another area, we may struggle more, or we may feel like, oh, I just took some steps back and not feeling happy about that. But again, reminding ourselves that this is a journey, or as the quote said earlier, this isn't a long distance race, but it's many short races, and giving ourselves permission to try and try again, and having grace with ourselves. And that's where that self-talk piece comes in as well. Like, what kind of messages am I telling myself? Am I giving myself grace? Am I encouraging myself? Am I seeking out support and connection with others who can also help me with that? So these are some tips for developing a growth mindset. And the first is to see challenges and opportunities instead of problems, which of course none of us, when something goes wrong, right away say, "Ooh, this is an opportunity, I'm excited," right? Of course, we all have that initial reaction to, "Oh, I can't believe this happened," or "This is terrible." But then allowing ourselves that moment, taking a breath and saying, "Okay, where's my challenge here? What's my opportunity? How can I solve this problem?" I also think it's really important to take time to celebrate your wins. And this is something that I don't know we do a great job of anyway, but I think it's even less so now that we're more isolated. And a quick example I wanted to share is I was working with someone who had just started doing the Dave Ramsey method of money management. I don't know if many of you are familiar with that, but it's a way to kind of get out of debt. And this person was able to just wipe out an enormous amount of debt in a very short time following this method. And when this person shared this with me, I was so excited. I just said, "Wow, that is amazing." And I shared a lot of enthusiasm because I was very impressed, being able to do this in our current economic situation and having, young kids, and very impressed. And this person just stopped for a moment and said, "No one has said that to me yet." And she did a little dance, and it was like we kind of celebrated together for a moment. But I don't think as individuals we always take the time to celebrate our wins or to help other people celebrate their wins. So taking the time to do that is important for so many reasons. So I hope you'll think about that going forward. Embracing your own journey and really looking at it as your own and avoiding comparisons. Again, it's not going to help me to compare myself to someone else, because I'm just going to end up feeling like maybe I'm inadequate or that I'm not doing something the way I'm supposed to. I often tell my clients that shoulds, like saying the word should in a counseling session, is kind of like swearing at yourself, because it just makes us feel guilty, and it's usually not very helpful. So instead, even looking to go to could, I could do this. It's a small kind of twist, but often it's really helpful. The idea of developing a gratitude practice can be really helpful, and I want to share a couple of my favorites. But during this time too, I'd like to invite you to share in the chat, if you'd like to, things that you're grateful for, or if you have a favorite gratitude practice, you're welcome to share that as well. One of my favorite gratitude practices is the 3 good things exercise. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the 3 good things, it's a very simple concept. At the end of each day, you write down 3 good things that happened and why they happened. And that why is really important, because that why is what tends to create appreciation, and appreciation is what tends to create happiness. So maybe as an example, maybe I'll say, "Oh, my supper was really good tonight." Why? Because I didn't have to cook it. Maybe it gives appreciation to the person who cooked it for me. Or maybe it was really good because I tried a new recipe. So I give myself a pat on the back for stepping out of my comfort zone and trying something new. Or again, those are maybe kind of simple examples, but thinking about that why can be really helpful. So the 3 good things exercise, and there's so much research that's shown its effectiveness on helping our moods go up. And the reason it was actually developed, if you do a quick Google search after this, if you're interested in learning more about it, was the researchers were looking for a way to improve scores on mood scales. And this was a really simple intervention that they found. I also like the idea of just taking a 30-second timeout for gratitude. Feeling really bad, taking a deep breath, closing my eyes, saying, "Okay, what am I grateful for?" That can have a way of really resetting our whole day. And if you're looking for more to like guided kind of gratitude practices, the Wellbeing website has some great ones on there from Dr. Sood as well. So Bridget, is there anything from the chat that you'd want to share quickly?
Yes, so thank you for sharing your gratitude. So grateful for my 2 wonderful kiddos. Start each day with a thought of gratitude from the previous day. Grateful for this presentation, so thank you for that. I'm grateful that I have a very supportive community of family, friends, and colleagues. And then I'm grateful for the weight management and well-being groups. And I'm grateful for my dog and my new puppy, grateful for health and health of my family, the support and resources that Mayo and employee well-being provides us. So thank you so much for sharing those gratitudes.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Bridget. I also like this idea of remembering that success is not always what you see. And I think it's important to remember that sometimes we're planting seeds for things further on down the line. And I think about this with parenting sometimes. You know, you'll hear often that, you know, what kids do out when they're in school or they're in public is a better test than what maybe they do at home. And thinking about sometimes the idea that we plant a seed with someone we care about, or, you know, at work, that maybe we don't always see what happens with that. I have a story that I share often to kind of demonstrate this point. And early on in my career, I worked with mostly juvenile males who were kind of labeled as defiant in some way, conduct disordered youth. And I had one person track me down years later on Facebook and send me a message and just said to me, Jody, I just wanted to let you know that you were right. I didn't end up in prison. And I wanted to thank you so much for that conversation. And now I have no idea what I said to this young man. I sure hope I was more eloquent than what it sounded like from his message. But the idea was that I had no idea what an impact that talk that day had with him. And I couldn't. And, you know, he went on to tell me about what he's doing in life now, and just a really great turnaround story. And I think about that with success in many different ways. Or even, you know, I noticed people were grateful for the weight loss group. You know, sometimes our wins aren't on the scale. You know, we think about non-scale wins too, like feeling strong, feeling healthy, feeling proud of something we were able to do better than we did yesterday. Again, thinking about some of those different ways that success is important. Acknowledging imperfection and embracing it, not expecting of it. Because oftentimes, I think, especially at Mayo, it's easy to be very perfectionistic, right? Because we want to do the best. We are very dedicated and motivated to make a huge positive impact on not only our small community, but on the world. So acknowledging that I don't have to be perfect to be worthy. I don't have to be perfect to make a positive difference. And not being perfect doesn't influence my journey into where I'm going and who I'm becoming. Find approval independently, really work to have that kind of internal knowledge of who I am and know my self-truths can be important. And I love this idea of a not yet perspective. You know, often people will say, well, I'm, you know, not this or I'm not that. And I think sometimes it's helpful to say not yet. You know, I'm not yet done with that, or I'm not yet where I want to be, or I haven't achieved that. It's just not yet. Can help us to want to continue to go and really change that internal dialogue, that self-talk that we have around things. So getting started, you know, journeys don't happen without a first step. If you remember what I said earlier about dig where the ground is soft, thinking about any of the things we've talked about today, or other things that you yourself have thought of, you know, outside of this presentation that maybe you want to change or improve, or notice that, gosh, this used to be really helpful to me. Maybe I've gotten away from it, or I'm doing all the things that were helpful for me before, but they don't feel like enough. What might I need to add in? Really thinking about that idea of what's your first step, and then also who can be supportive of you. I think sharing with others kind of what you're trying to change or what you're trying to do can be so powerful. Kind of like those connection groups that were mentioned earlier. There's so much power in having the support of others. And I have a story that I like to share, and I apologize if some of you are on the webinar that have heard me share it before, but in a different talk that I've done before, I often ask people about this concept of sharing with who can be supportive. And we had a woman share with us that she had decided to quit smoking. So she told everyone she knew, including her grandma, who didn't even know she smoked. So you can imagine the amount of pressure on her to be successful, but she was, because again, she had that power of that community, that accountability. So thinking about for yourself who that person is or who those people are can be really helpful in making that change. And right now I'm gonna change what I'm sharing, because I want to share a little something with you, and then I'll explain why I'm sharing it in just a moment. All right, so why I shared that video, obviously it's kind of the idea of first steps and correlates nicely with that, right? But one strategy that I share with a lot of the people I work with individually is this idea of having something that can make you smile, that can shift your perspective no matter what kind of mood you're in, and having those easily available. And that's a video, my son's now 5, so it's kind of old, but that's a video that no matter what kind of mood I'm in, it can always shift my perspective. And I love it in terms of perseverance too, because you see at the end he falls and makes his little raspberry noises like, oh, on to the next thing, or that was fun, and now I'm going to do something else. So I just thought it was a nice little illustration of that. And I encourage you to think of your own, whether that be, again, a picture, a video, maybe it's an inspirational quote, maybe it's some type of prayer or mantra, but thinking about what it is for you that can be that shift. And then again, thinking about this idea of journeys don't happen without that first step. Where do you start? And so Bridget's going to go ahead and put up another poll for us about kind of where you feel like you may be able to start kind of an action in progress. And I'm curious to see where everybody on the webinar falls with that. And then if there's other things, you can feel free to share in the chat too, and we'll make sure to share that with the larger group. And thank you all for participating so much in all of these chats and polls. It really makes this a lot more interactive and much more fun to present. I'm not going to lie, I miss sometimes being in some of the big auditoriums and being able to see the faces and get the questions live time. So this is a really great way to interact and engage. So I appreciate all of your participation so much. It's looking like I would say that a lot of people are going to start to tune into self-talk and challenge negative thoughts. That's awesome. I love hearing that as a counselor. That's great. And I always say, like, look for the more helpful reframe. It doesn't have to be overly positive. It just needs to be more helpful to you. That's awesome to see. I see a lot of these other ones are really close to trying a gratitude exercise. Is right up there, and trying new connection strategies, taking time to celebrate. I love seeing all of these. And Bridget, can you share that with everyone so they can and I think everybody can see the results to kind of see where kind of the ones that people are willing to share. And was there any from the chat, Bridget, that you wanted to bring in?
I do not see, oh, here we're going. Trying to be more intentional with being present.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, being in the moment. Yes. Thank you all so much for taking the time to share that. And like I said, I hope that you'll consider sharing that with someone who can be supportive and, working on that as a first step for yourself. I wanted to share some resources with people. The Employee Assistance Program, which is where I'm from, it's free, completely confidential counseling. It's not part of any medical record. So if you need someone to talk to, or you want to talk to someone about making a plan for any of the things we talked about, or you're finding you struggle, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. You can do that by calling or by finding us on the intranet. The Enterprise EAP number is also up there. The Employee Wellbeing site, they have so much great information available there. And then the Bold Forward at Work site also has some great connection strategies. And I know we don't have much time left, but I'm going to open it up quickly for Q&A.
Yes, so we will wrap up in 2 minutes just to give everyone time to have a little break in between your maybe next meeting. There is one question, and it's, to what extent does depression play on the mindset fixed versus growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that it would play a huge, have a huge impact, because when you're in a depressive state, it's very hard to see options, right? You're very much in a fixed mindset just because of the nature of depression. So it'd be harder to get out of that. But a lot of the growth mindset strategies are also strategies that we would talk to someone with depression who's trying to work to get out of that. We would encourage them to employ some of the same strategies. So knowing what works to kind of help the depression can definitely help with the growth mindset. So great question. And if people are struggling with depression, definitely encourage them to reach out for some mental health support, and we definitely have those resources available. Thanks for the question.
Yes, and I will be sending a follow-up email with more information from Employee Assistance Program and Vital Works and the context for each site and region area. So
great. Yeah.
With that being said, yeah, I don't see any other questions, but in the chat, if you could just say what has been the most helpful takeaway from today's session, we'll just kind of end with that. We are getting questions about copy of slides.
Sure.
And that I can also send to you in a follow-up email. If you just want to share, I'm not alone was the biggest takeaway. Thank you. Any other takeaways? Focus and attention. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that I'm not alone is so important, because it is easy, especially right now, to not feel like others are going through the same thing you are, or compare what you see on the surface or what you see on social media posts compared to what's really going on. So definitely not alone.
Yes, realistic expectation setting is big. So having that realistic expectation, keeping the not yet perspective was very helpful. Great ideas to connect with colleagues, with my team, and some ideas that I'll share with my kids who are missing school and friends connection right now. So true. Other ideas, good reminder to use a larger bag of tricks. Thank you. Add the why to my gratitude exercise was very helpful. Make the effort to maintain connections and make new ones. So thank you so much for your participation. One of the things that the employee wellbeing team is working on is just culture change and making sure that our meetings don't last like an hour, to give you a little space in between to prepare for your next meeting. So we thank you so much for your participation. I will send a follow-up email with all the details that you need to know. And Jody and I thank you, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.